if you have, let's say you have a building worth $1.5 million. This building is owned by a company. Let's call it a Bahamian company. And the shares of this company are owned by a Turks and Caicos company. And then the shares of the Turks and Caicos company are owned by a trust in the Cayman Islands. Trying to find out who is the true beneficial owner of this building is almost impossible. And this is one of the reasons why the Americans and the Europeans get upset with the Bahamas, because in the Bahamas there are no laws that require them, us, anybody, to keep track of the beneficial owners. I talked about last time beneficial owners and legal owners, right? Right. So our laws require a record of the legal owners, but nobody requires a record of the beneficial owners. So a lady was saying, one of the lawyers was saying that she has purchased some property, and she's purchasing the property in the name of a Bahamian company. The Bahamian company is owned by a trust. So the question was, when you're doing your identification, your due diligence, who do you do it on? Do you do it on the trust? Do you do it on the company? What? So you have the company. The shares of this company are registered with the registry of companies here. You can do a search and find out who owns the shares. But the shares are owned by a Turks and Caicos Island company. You can do a search in the Turks and Caicos. Mind you, you're going from country to country, that's money. And find out who owns the shares of this company. And then you run into a trust. And the trust, there's no public record. Because the trust is not like a company where you have to register the ownership. And this trust is run by a trustee. And the trustee could be another company. So it's very difficult to track the ownership, much less do the due diligence on the owners. And this is part of the way people hide ownership. Now, one of the things you have to be careful of is there are legitimate reasons why a person might not want their ownership to be known. It isn't just that it's criminal or illegal activities. A person may want to keep their ownership private because they're concerned about things like kidnapping and extortion. In many countries, wealthy people are kidnapped and held for ransom of their children and so on. So there may be legitimate reasons. However, because of this kind of structure, the Bahamas gets criticized a lot for hiding ownership. Okay, the next one is called round tripping. Round tripping is taking money out of the jurisdiction and then returning it as direct foreign investment. Taking money out of the jurisdiction and then bringing it back as a foreign investment. Okay, now there are a lot of things here. Many times Bahamians complain that foreign investors get concessions that Bahamian business people don't get. If you're a foreign investor and you register under the Hotel Encouragement Act, you don't have to pay property tax, you don't have to pay customs duties on the stuff you bring in, and so on. Whereas if you're a Bahamian trying to start a little hotel in Andros, you have to pay all of these things. So there are reasons why you might, as a Bahamian, want to have an investment that is registered with the government as a foreign investment coming from a foreign company to take advantage of these concessions. That's one thing. The other thing, of course, is if the money that you're investing comes from an illegal source, you might want to hide that fact. So again, you may take it out of the Bahamas and bring it back in as a foreign investment. The Chinese are famous for this. The Chinese use companies in the BVI to invest back into China. So if you look at the statistics, you'll see that the biggest foreign investor in China is the British Virgin Islands. But the British Virgin Islands is a little tiny place. But they have about 500,000 companies. And so Chinese people set up companies in BVI, put money into them, and then they invest back into China. So that is another thing they call round tripping, to move money in and out of a country to hide the source. The next one is called bank capture. Bank capture. Ownership of a controlling interest in a financial institution. Ownership of a controlling interest in a financial institution. This one used to be easy, now it's much more difficult. In order to get a bank license, bank capture. Ownership of a controlling interest in a financial institution. Good? Yeah, that used to be easy, it's more difficult now. What you found in the old days was anybody basically who had the money could own a bank. There was no big deal. Once you had the money, you could own a bank. Nowadays, there are a lot of checks and balances. There's a lot of due diligence done before a bank license is issued. So it's much more difficult for illegal persons or persons involved in illegal activities to actually get a controlling interest in the bank. In Turks and Caicos, there was a trust company, and the owner of the trust company wanted to sell out and retire. And the people here at Fidelity were looking at it at one time, but that didn't work out. And then an American guy who owns gambling machines in Turks and Caicos made a lot of money in the States, but now in Turks and Caicos he owns most of the casino machines and stuff. He was interested in buying this trust company. But because he was involved in gaming, there was a view by the regulators that you have to be careful because gambling people and gaming people are not bankers. They're accustomed to taking chances, whereas what you want from a banker is a person who does not take chances with people's money. So there was a lot of back and forth. And then, of course, this whole thing came up about whether you should allow the proceeds of gambling into ownership of a financial institution. But gambling is not illegal. Now, in the old days, you all numbers people and so on and so on. We all know that. But today, you're licensed legitimate businesses. So you cannot hold it against the man if he has a license to operate gaming. So eventually, it was approved that he purchased the trust company. But it is a tricky area. And like I said, gaming is not even illegal. And yet people were concerned about him owning a financial institution. So that is not as easy as it used to be. The next one they have is gaming. Gaming. Cash for chips. Chips returned for checks. Cash for chips. Chips returned for checks. Payment of artificial winnings. They mean, of course, that the person didn't really win, but you're paying him to provide a legitimate source for illegal funds.
What was the last one?
Payment of artificial winnings. One of the, okay, I do work in Suriname in South America for the Minister of Finance and Central Bank and stuff. And one of the things they were looking at is taxing casinos and gaming. And one of the issues that came up is how do you track the winnings of persons? At the moment in Suriname, they tax based on the machines and the tables. So every month they go in and they count how many machines a casino has, how many tables, and so on, and then they send them an invoice. But they were saying that there is a computerized system that they have in Curacao, I think, and Aruba, where the computer keeps track of how much money is paid out by each machine. And then the government takes a cut based on the tax, based on the amount of the winnings. And so I said, well, I don't know how we do it in the Bahamas. I've never really talked to the gaming board about how they actually tax the casinos here. But now they're looking at putting in place a computerized system that will track the winnings paid by each machine. I don't know how that's going to affect you all if they introduce that in the Bahamas, that they will actually track your payment of winnings. Because then it's going to be very, very difficult to say that you all are laundering money, because the government will have the records of all payments made. So it will protect you in the sense that, you know, nobody can accuse you of doing illegal activities if the computer is monitoring all the winnings. But then, of course, that means that all of the information about your operations is available to the government, which might be an issue as well. So anyway, what we're saying is that this thing is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And the last one was real estate. Real estate is a big area for moving funds. A very big area for moving funds. And there are several reasons for that. Obviously, when you're dealing with real estate, you're dealing with large amounts of money. So you can be dealing with a lot for $100,000 or a building for several million. And there is no real requirement to register real estate transactions. Okay, you have to pay a stamp duty on the transaction. But there's no requirement for you actually to register the documents with the registry. The reason why people register with the registry is for protection, that they want to make sure there's a public record of their ownership. They want to make sure the bank has lent them money. They want to make sure there's a public record of the mortgage charge. But there's no requirement really for you to do that. So you could actually sell land, pay the customs duty, and keep the documents in the lawyer's office without registering them. And you could sell that property 3 and 4 times and then register the new owner if you wanted to. So real estate is always a big thing. The other issue with real estate is, what is the value of land? Why is one piece of property worth $10,000 and another piece of property worth $100,000? Yeah, but why? What makes one piece of land different from another piece of land?
Location.
Location is what they say. If you are next to white people.
Waterfront.
If you're on the waterfront, okay, that's supposed to be more valuable than over the hill. But I know people over the hill who've built houses on their property worth $250,000. Huge property houses with three garages and stuff in South Beach. So, this is the question, what is, so that's the other thing with real estate, is you can put a price on real estate, and it's hard for people to argue that's not the amount that should be paid for it. So if you want to loan the money, you can say, I'm gonna buy some property for 10,000, and then I'm gonna sell it for 100,000, and then I'm gonna resell it for a $500,000, and you can each time raise the price until when you finally do it, you do the check for $1 million, he takes it to the bank and he says, well, this is the proceeds of the sale of my property in Inagua. Who can argue with him? Whether it's worth $1 million or it's not worth $1 million. So real estate is a favorite way to launder funds. It's one of the most common typologies to move money around. And plus, like I say, it's going through lawyers. It doesn't have to, there's no requirement for you to actually track the sale of the land in the Bahamas. In some countries, you have to register the land sales.
You need to have land registry because sometimes, people purchasing the same property.
The problem with title, in the Bahamas, we have problems with titles for land. People can buy property and then find out that they don't have good title. And then how do you get the money back? So there's a big push for us to become modern and set up a modern land registry where, you have a public record of who owns all the land on every island. But right now, today, the only way to check a title is to go back to the registry and see who owned the property over the last 30 years and how it ended up with the person who's trying to sell it to you. So you're really taking a chance, but that's the way we have historically done it. It's going to take a while for us to move to a modern system. In Turks and Caicos, they have a registry where you can go and find out who owns any piece of property, and every sale has to be registered.
What about Crown land?
Crown land is the government, and the government selling it, it will be registered. Yeah. We have another problem in the Bahamas called generation property. It's not crown land. Crown land is the government owned. But generation property, who does that belong to? That's the problem. I went to Abaco once when I was working at Development Bank. There's a gentleman wanted to borrow money to buy a boat in Abaco. So we went down to Abaco. He had a beautiful home. 3 bedroom, 3 bath, garage, family room, everything. But it was on generation property, and he was very proud that he didn't have to spend no money to buy the land. He said he spent all his money on the building, making it comfortable and furnishing it, but the land is generation land. And I guess it's good for you. But what happens if you want to sell it? What happens if you want to get a mortgage on your property? You can't get a mortgage because you don't have title, and you can't sell it. But, again, that's traditional in the Bahamas, generation property.
A lot of people now are trying to go through the courts and trying to get the title, like, again.
Right, you have quieting of title, right? You can do that. If you don't have proper documentation for property, you can go through the courts and get quieting of title. The problem with getting quieting of title for generation property is you have a whole set of family who can claim that land. So you almost have to get all of them to agree. It's different if you have land where it's been owned by people, but the documents have been destroyed, and people say, well, that was always owned by the Johnson family, it was always owned by the Fergusons. You go to court, and then the court will give you new documents. But where you have the situation where 100 cousins and family members can claim the property, then you get a problem. And there are several islands in the Bahamas where you have a lot of that. Huh?
I said some family members you don't like particularly.
Not only you don't like, a lot of them ain't here. Some of them in the States. And how you can find them to agree? So we need to clean up the real estate. The crown land is one thing, right? People say that foreigners get concessions for crown land, Bahamians wait so long to get crown land. But even the generation property needs to be cleaned up. So we have a lot of, when it comes to real estate, we have a lot of issues. That is another thing too. I've seen, for example, on some islands, people involved in supposedly illegal activities, building homes, etc., very expensive homes on the island, on generation land. But then when you come to them, they say, well, I don't own it, because there's no record of who owns it. It's on generation property. So there's no sale, there's no purchase. He could say, my grandson owned it, my grandmother owned it. You can't argue with them because there's no record. So that the real estate is for us in the Bahamas, is a tricky area. Okay. Let's talk about terrorist financing. Is terrorist financing an issue for us in the Bahamas?
No.
No. Yeah, I don't think for us terrorist financing. There is no record I am aware of any report of terrorist financing or any investigation into terrorist financing or any prosecution related to terrorist financing in the Bahamas. That's number one. Number two, again, because we're dealing with Bahamian dollars, we're not seeing any flow of funds from the Bahamas as such into the Far East or Middle East or anything like that. So for us, terrorist financing is not a major risk area. Obviously, after 9/11, we cannot not follow the international standards. So we have the laws in place regarding terrorist financing, making it a criminal offense. But that has not been an area of weakness or high risk for us. The other thing about terrorist financing, because it is about future activities, because we're looking at the destination of the money. See, with criminal activities, what you're saying is a crime was committed, this money was gotten from the crime, and now I don't want anybody to deal with those funds. So I don't want the funds deposited to a bank. I don't want those funds accepted for investment and so on. But with terrorist financing, you're talking about, will this money be used in the future? So you're talking about destination in the future of the money. That makes it almost impossible because you don't know where money is going to go. You don't know what people are going to do with it in the future. But it's simplified because the United Nations issues a list of terrorist-related persons, organizations, and countries. So if you want to get that, you can get it from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Bahamas. And there's regular updating of that list. So those are the persons you are not supposed to do business with. So that makes life a lot easier because all you have to do is follow the prohibitions that are issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they come from the United Nations. Anytime there's a big problem like Afghanistan or Iraq, the ministry will issue a new listing of persons and organizations that should be avoided. You shouldn't open bank accounts, you shouldn't do transactions on their behalf, and so on. Syria, Russia, Iraq, Afghanistan, all of these have been issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now, I don't expect that in the web shop business you would come across any of these people. It's more the banks. We have had cases where banks in the Bahamas had accounts for people in the Middle East. But in the web shop business, again, I think because you're dealing with residents, you shouldn't have a problem with that terrorist financing area at all. Your area of concern would be persons who are in the Bahamas but who are not maybe legal, don't have legal status in the Bahamas. So the question is, when people come in to gamble, to, what do you call it, gamble? What do you? Game. When people come in to game, do you ask for a work permit? Do you ask for, should you establish their status? Or do you just assume that they're Bahamian? That's the question. So if I come in the game, I got to bring my passport?
In order to have an account with us, yeah.
Right, so you have to establish the status of the person when they open an account. The money transfer people, I know you have to bring in your passport. Now they want two IDs, driver's license and so on. So that would be the issue for you, is that are these people who are gaming legally resident, that's the term, legally resident in the Bahamas? But I don't think terrorist financing is something that you have to worry about. Again, even in terms of the money transfer people, there will be certain countries that are flagged. But again, I don't think you will see many Bahamians or persons resident in the Bahamas sending money to Kuwait or sending money to Saudi Arabia. That would be very unusual. Most of our people are Latin Americans or Caribbean people sending money to Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, those kind of places. So anybody who comes in and wants to send money to Kuwait or Oman or them places in the Middle East, right away would be a red flag. Okay. Tell me about the accounts that you can open with gaming. You said there's no limit, right? You can open with any amount of money, right? Huh? I can't hear you. You don't need money to open an account?
When open, like if you want to open an account,
Right, with the web shop. You
like
don't,
for spending in different names.
right, you don't need money?
I ain't shop with that web shop. No.
So you don't have to deposit funds? You can play on credit?
No.
That's what you're
I mean,
saying?
if you want to play, you have to deposit funds. But if you want to just open an account, you don't have to pay to open an account.
So how do you open an account? You just fill out the forms?
And then you need identification.
Right. But I mean, you don't have to put money on the account before you play?
Yeah, you have to put money on it.
Okay, so you don't give credit to the person to play?
No. I mean, only like on promotions and different things.
No.
Sometimes.
Sometimes you give them credit, like $10 or $20 to start them off. But after that, they have to deposit. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, the risk for web shops is at the account opening point to make sure you get the identification, which we all know now. But like I say, the question then is, what is the person's status in the country? In the past, you could have a driver's license without having any status in the country.
You still could do that.
But I think now they say that you have to bring your passport to get a driver's license.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the new
The
one.
right, the new ones now, even to get the license for the car, they told me I have to bring in the passport. I say, the car don't have no passport. The car don't go Miami. The man look at me and say, you're trying to be smarty. I say, I'm just saying, why if I'm licensing my car, you can't accept my driver's license? Why I gotta bring a passport? But it seemed like
You need an ID card.
right, it seemed like the new system, you cannot get a driver's license without showing your status as a legal resident. So that makes it easy for you, because when they come to you with their driver's license, you know they have already been checked out. So your thing is, the risk for you would be whether or not they are illegal immigrants in the country. Like I say, the money transfer people, they already have that under control, because they require that kind of identification. And in fact, from what I see, if you are not a Bahamian citizen, you have to actually pay in US dollars when you're transferring money. So they have that well under control. But I'm not sure where the web shops stand on status, whether that is a requirement for opening an
You
account.
need to be a Bahamian citizen and you have to be able to show us where you live. You need an address verification, which street you live on.
You need a utility bill.
It says you use US dollars when you're visiting.
Oh, like the people from the boat,
Yeah, even if you're here and
A tourist.
if you have a permit to reside
right,
but not work,
right.
you use US dollars.
Okay, so it's only if you are earning Bahamian dollars,
Right.
you can show your earning, then you
If
could
have a
transfer.
spouse- If you have a spousal or work permit, you
Right.
use Bahamian.
Right.
Only if you're visiting, you have a permit to reside,
Okay,
then you use US.
US dollars, okay.
Or even if you work on a ship, you live here, but you work on a ship,
Ah,
so you have a ship ID and you have a sea riders
Right.
identification, then you use all US. We know you live here, but because you
But
work
you,
on that
you,
ship,
you get paid in US dollars,
Right.
so you gotta send US
US
dollars.
dollars.
Okay.
You don't confide to our fees.
Right. See, they have their stuff together. Those money transfer people, because they are viewed as high risk. Because they're moving money across borders from country to country, they are under the microscope. So they have very good standards already. The web shop people who are trying to build their reputation and get respect, y'all have to raise your standards to their level. Because, you know, that's the issue here is how do we get web shops on the same level as other financial institutions with the same level of respect. There's no reason why the fact that they were numbers in the past should mean that they cannot become respected financial institutions. But to get respect, you have to raise your standards. So but like I said, terrorist financing should not be a problem at all for you all. Okay, what else do I want to talk about? Anything else that I need to talk about? I made a note to talk about something over. Oh, yeah. Risk-based due diligence. Risk-based due diligence. Nowadays in financial services, what we're seeing is that people are saying, look, you have to approach this thing efficiently. You cannot do everything for everybody because everybody doesn't have the same level of risk. So you have to divide your clients, your customers, into two groups, at least two groups. One is high risk and the other is low risk. Once you do that, you can establish standards for each group. So, for example, in the Bahamas, low risk would be Bahamian citizens and residents. We know who they are, we know where to find them, we know where their money comes from, we know they have national insurance. Those would be considered generally low risk. High risk are non-residents. Anytime you're dealing with foreigners, people who come and go, you don't know where they live, you don't know where they're gonna be, you don't know where their money comes from, they would be considered high risk. And so you design your due diligence to fit those two groups. For a Bahamian citizen, ID, passport, driver's license, national insurance should be more than sufficient. Utility bill confirms address. If you're dealing with a non-resident, a foreigner, then you have to start to think about what country is their citizenship. Is it Colombia or is it Jamaica? Those are high-risk countries, okay, because they're known internationally for drug trafficking. Is it the UK? Is it the US? Then we would say, okay, those countries have high standards. We would expect to be able to track those persons relatively easily. So the idea is to make your work as efficient as possible by dividing it into these categories. Now, even within Bahamians and Bahamian residents, there will be people of high risk and low risk. So that a Bahamian resident who is employed with the government, with a bank, with a insurance company, those kinds of organizations would be considered relatively low risk. A person who is self-employed, what does that mean, self-employed? What do they do? How do they make their money? Self-employed could be anything from selling peanuts on the side of the road, right, to anything. So if a person is self-employed, you got to be careful. That area is a high risk, even within the Bahamians and Bahamian residents. So again, you need to have in your manual something that addresses this risk-based approach. Now, one of the highest risks dealing with Bahamians is what they call PEPs, P-E-P-S, politically exposed persons. politically exposed persons. If you've been following the news on Bank of the Bahamas, you know this is the killer area. They are saying that Bank of the Bahamas has a large number of big, non-performing loans, monies that were lent to politicians and senior civil servants who have not repaid their loans. The last punch I saw said that Leslie Miller owes $28 million. I don't know. That must be the whole bowling alley and all of that stuff. It's too much, eh?
That's too much.
That's too much, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah. All right.
No, they say that.
I even interest.
All that interest keep accumulating over.
That's too much.
She's
I
learned
have
that.
to argue already.
I can't be no more, you ain't gotta worry.
I still go for Leslie anyway.
Yeah, Leslie's a good guy. I mean, Leslie for me is one of those persons who tell it like it is, you know? You might like him or dislike what he say, but he tell it as he sees it. So that's honesty, you gotta respect that. But what I'm saying is, obviously there's some people who borrowed money from the bank who have political connections. Now, what gets me is, we had a PLP government, we had an FNM government, then we had a PLP government again. All of them were borrowing. So there must be some FNMs who borrowed money, as well as some PLPs who borrowed money. So you're not trying to tell me that the FNMs pay their bills and the PLPs don't pay their bills, because they all behave, all them crooked, as far as I'm concerned. They're politicians. So you have to be a little bit careful. But what they're trying to say is, be careful with politicians. That's what they're trying to say. These are considered high risk, even though they're behaving, even though you have the utility bill with their address. Watch out for politicians, because politicians can use their position to cover up, to hide, to try and get you to give them special terms, etc., etc. I'll never forget when they had the Commission of Inquiry on drug trafficking years ago. They said Mr. Pinling had an account with Bank of Nova Scotia with an overdraft for must be $1 million, and he had not made a deposit in must be like 2 years. And if I have an overdraft for 2 days, they start calling my house. They start calling my house, and my wife said, well, what you doing? You giving woman money or something? Why are you overdrawn? But politicians will have these big bills. I don't know how many politicians owe BEC and the water and sewerage and property tax. What is with y'all? The two of them like Leslie. What's going on?
Leslie obese.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They don't pay water, they don't pay light, they don't pay none of these things. Cable. And then people are afraid to cut them off. So I'm saying, be careful when you talk about giving credit on promotion. For these politicians, every day is promotion. They want credit every day. Be careful. Now, the question is, who are PEPs? Obviously, Mr. Miller, for example, is a MP. Mr. Ingram was an MP, is a Prime Minister. But it goes beyond that. They're saying senior civil servants. So people who are permanent secretaries, people who are head of financial central bank, or these commissions and so on, all of them are considered to be PEPs. But even it goes beyond that. It says, and their families.
Yeah.
So their wives, husbands, and children, their immediate families. When I was in Turks and Caicos, they have a commission where you have to declare your assets. We have one here, but it don't really seem to work too good. But in Turks, every year you have to fill out a big form, how much money in your bank account, how much cars you own, how much land you own, everything. And it's you and your wife and any of your dependent children. So if your children are under 21, you have to put anything in their name. So now I have to put in there, I know how much I make. There's no way my wife can tell me what she's making. I don't know. All I know is the woman have money. But I don't know nothing else. You understand? So, but I am supposed to put these figures in, and I couldn't fix my mouth to ask my wife what she had. So I just have to guess. So I just put in a guesstimate for her, how much she makes or how much her savings is and so on.
So how we can answer?
Because I don't want to get licked down in the middle of the night and she say, oh, I thought that's a mosquito. Bye. I don't want no problems. I just had to go home, you know, I ain't like you. I can't sleep out every night. I just had to go home. I know her good. I know her good. She don't go home. I just had to go home, man. So anyhow, so the issue is here, you might recognize a name as being somebody related to a politician or a senior civil servant. But you might want to consider on your forms, account opening forms, stating a question. Are you or any of your family members political or senior civil service, for the person to say tick yes or no? That would help you. You have that?
Yeah, we have some forms.
Right, that helps.
Opening an account, we ask, but some persons still don't tell us.
No, but that's not the problem. Listen, you're not, see, this is very important.
Yeah.
This is very important. You are not responsible for other people's behavior. That's not what the court is saying. That's not what the law is saying. The law is saying you must have in place a system that will try and identify these people. Now, if a person lie, they lie. But if that person then goes into investigation, you will see when you go to court, you say, we had the form, the question was asked, they did not tell the truth. The court will say, well, you did your part. That's all you have to worry about. But there's no way you can be, and people change. A person is not a pep today. Next thing you know, election call, they decide to run, they're a pep tomorrow. Or they marry a pep. So things change over time. What you want to show is when they open the account, when they establish the relationship, that you ask the right questions. There was a fella who was arrested in the States for money laundering. He had an insurance company. He may still have it. Here in the Bahamas, he had a trust company at one time. He was running here. He has an office on Shirley Street. He's an accountant by training. And he was arrested, I think, in California. And they had him under arrest for some time, then they released him, he came back home. But he said, you know what saved me? Is that I was able to show them that all of these people they were investigating, when they came to me to open an account, I asked all of them these questions. And they signed to say these answers were truthful. Now, the fact that they lied to me is another problem. But at least I checked and I did my part. And so as a result, I was released. So it's doing what you can to prevent, not that you have any guarantee that people are going to tell you the truth. So politically exposed persons, be careful, because with the change in the government, the F&M government now, they are actually saying that they're going to start looking at persons in politics who are guilty of corruption. And so you may want to be careful, because obviously there's more attention going to be paid not only to the people in the past who may have borrowed money and not paid it back, or people who receive payments under the table, but going forward, Dr. Minnis is saying if he find any of his ministers involved, they'll get fired. So,
Don't they say that all the time?
Yeah, but I'm just saying now you may find that there's more attention being paid to those things. Now, whether they get prosecuted and go to jail, I'd be very surprised, because I don't know too many politicians who actually been sent to jail. But I'm saying, on your part, be careful, because it looks like people will be paying more attention to these politically exposed persons. Okay. On that part there, the compliance officer has certain responsibilities within an organization. And it's the compliance officer who is expected to identify problems and report to management. But external auditors now, under the law, have a responsibility to report where they see, when they're doing their financial audit, any issues that might involve potential suspicious transactions, suspicious activity. So if your firm has external auditors, are all of y'all audited? Yeah, you have Price Waterhouse or KPMG and them come in? Who?
Deloitte.
Deloitte, right. They have a responsibility to report as well. So somebody will be looking over your shoulder and checking on you. Wow.
Okay.
I touched something?
No. I think she might be off. Sorry. She was off for long? She didn't say that she hasn't called? Okay.
She going Mario Day. She don't know we Miami right now.
Huh?
Yeah.
What was I saying?
Being audited.
Yeah, external audit. So you will find that the external auditors are looking over your shoulder, and now under the law, they have a responsibility to report. So given that there are people who are going to be checking on you, my advice is to err on the side of prudence. That means if you have an item or if you have a client where you are suspicious, report it to your compliance officer and then let the compliance officer decide whether it should go to the Financial Intelligence Unit or to the Gaming Board. And if you, as the compliance officer, if you're the compliance officer, talk with your manager and decide whether or not you should report. Then you can say, I have reviewed the matter, I have had a discussion with the manager, and we have determined that this will be not reported or not reported. Because when the external auditor comes in and looks at it and says, why haven't you reported it? I am going to report it. It's going to be an issue for you. So that's the idea behind trying to ensure that you have a clean record, because there will be people checking on you. The last thing I think I want to talk about today is on-site examinations. Okay, on-site examinations. Have you all ever had an on-site examination?
Central
Like,
You know, by Central Bank?
By central bank or
Money
compliance? No?
Yeah, money grab as well.
Money grab, right, okay, right. There are two things. Right, the money transfer people, that's what I was telling you. The money transfer people actually are at a higher standard now. Because the money transfer people deal with international companies like Western Union and MoneyGram, those companies, particularly the American-based ones, have their own internal auditors, their own internal inspectors, their own internal controls. And so when you sign up as part of Western Union or a franchisee for MoneyGram, they will do inspections on you to make sure your procedures are in place, make sure your manuals are in place, make sure you have the correct forms. And part of that check is not only to make sure the money part is right, that you're paying on time and so forth. There was a Western Union company in Turks, a franchise, that lost their license because they weren't making the payments properly and so on. But also they will be looking at money laundering procedures and protections. Because if you're using their name and the headline is MoneyGram in the Bahamas charged or Western Union in the Bahamas charged, people don't say, well, that's a different set of Western Union from in the States, or that's a different set of MoneyGram from in England. It's all the same reputation. So people in those firms are checking on all of their operations, branches all over the world. With web shops, it's a little bit different. As far as I'm aware, all of the web shops are Bahamian incorporated, Bahamian owned, Bahamian based. They're not connected to international gaming organizations. So there's no internal inspectors, checks coming from abroad to check on you. Everything is done locally. But all of those are internal. The on-site examination is when the regulator comes into your office, when their staff come in to check your books. Again, with the banks and so on, the central bank does them. With the lawyers, it's the compliance commission, go into the law firms and check. Web shops, again, because y'all are in between the gaming board and the compliance commission, they haven't worked out how to deal with y'all yet.
Yeah,
But,
Gaming board staff and come into all our stores and we have
They
separate
do?
auditors.
okay. But do they look at anti-money laundering as well, the gaming board? I don't know if they look
I'm
at
not
that
sure if
part.
the gaming board is
Right.
but we have people from other audit.
Like
companies
Deloitte
that
and
come in.
Ernst and Young?
No, Baker and Tilly and them.
Okay, so maybe they're using Baker and Tilly to represent the compliance commission to look at that stuff. So you can get caught sooner or later. So again, don't believe that, if you're doing something that it ain't gonna come up. It's gonna come up by your external auditors, or it's gonna come up on the on-site examinations, because there will be independent people coming in to check on you. So that's the other thing I wanted to mention. Okay, I think that's it for today. Like I say, next week, there's no class because of the holiday. When we come back the following Saturday, we can do a review. By then, you should have read the 3 handouts, and you can ask me if you like, what areas you have problems with, any questions. And then we'll have a short test afterwards. I haven't prepared the test yet. I'll probably prepare it this weekend. But like I say, if you have attended the classes, you shouldn't have no problems with the test. I'm not here to trip you up or make life difficult for you. I know you're all working people and you give up your Saturdays. That's a big sacrifice to come in here after Friday night partying with a hangover. I know it's tough. So, okay?
No Memorial Day.
All right, so any questions? Any areas you want me to go over again or anything? Anybody missing? Any of your friends missing? Take a copy of the handout for them. Huh? Oh, thanks. Thanks for reminding me. Thanks.
Lauren, you come back on the trip for us?
We got to go for Memorial Day.
Byron being somewhere you were with Byron. He is left.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't want to get number, we still have your number.
Good? Yeah, just the attendance sheet.
No problem.
Anyway.
Just swap that plug out for me.
Good?
The locks were placed in there.
So we're gonna be getting, things based on those and.
Right. Keep it simple. Just the basics. Make sure that you were listening. So you have anybody you know who should have been here who hasn't?
We
Take
get
a copy for.
We get it.
You got one for her? Okay.
So once you assign, we can.
Yeah. We're done.
Okay,
My voice tired.
the test is not this week, we're off next week, but the following.
Following week, right. We come in, we'll do a review for the first hour or so, then we do the test, then you can go.
So we, okay, because you didn't really cover much of KYC in particular.
KYC, know your customer?
Yeah.
That's the ID, profile, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you should be able to read that right in there. Like I say, if the 3 handouts cover everything, basically. But I will, when I do the review, I will highlight the areas before the test. But like I said, I'm trying to keep it simple because I know what it is to have to work, go to school, take care of a family, take care of the boo, all those things. It's not easy. Not easy. I know it's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
It's not easy. All right, darling, take care. I was trying to figure, what is that orange thing in that bottle?
Lime.
Oh, that's lime.
Lime,
Oh, okay.
You not just drink water.
Flavor water.
I could, but I tried to flavor it up.
Okay, very good. Take care. Thanks for coming.
Byron, where you treat this
I mean, you just reach back in.
Just, you ain't even reach back to save money over off your little breakfast.
Why would it have to be?
Byron been on a good leave. Byron on a vacation. You're not together, so you'll be good. Thank you.